Mayor, we are live on YouTube and recording now.
Okay. Okay, we'll call this council work session to order. It's Wednesday, April 21st. Time is 1 p.m. I'll open it up for visitor comments. If you'd like to make a comment, please raise your hands and we'll acknowledge you and allow you to turn on your video and your audio. I'm going to give it just a minute here to see if we have any raised hands. I do see Richard Mason is on here. We are aware of a couple boats down there. I do know that.
How do we raise our hands?
So we go into the participants, and then there is actually an area where you can raise your hand.
Ann, would you like to speak as?
I would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mayor, this is Ann Schultz. And it looks like, Mayor, your video is frozen.
See, I'm trying to raise my hand here, but
Unable to start visiting.
Richard, I'm going to have Ann go first. Councilor President Morton, it appears Mayor Scholl's video is kind of frozen right now. Would you like to, would you be able to listen to public comments from Ann Schultz right now? And you're on mute right now, Councilor President.
Thank you. Yes, let's go ahead with that.
Okay. Ann, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Ann Scholes. I'm the manager of Eisenschmidt Swimming Pool. Just a little quick history. The pool is 82 years old this year. We're very proud of that. We keep it running. At the beginning of COVID, we were alerted by the city of a significant water leak. We found it to be an underground pipe at the bottom of our filter pits, which had original piping of 82 years old. That project was fixed immediately to the tune of $25,000 during the COVID closure, so we were not making any money. We were losing 400,000 gallons a month, which is nearly 2 entire pools full through that leak. It was a big hole in the bottom of a pipe underground at the bottom of the filter pit, so we fixed that immediately. COVID forced me to lay off 25 people, which made me extremely sad. Most of whom were young and went off to get other more secure jobs, mainly FedEx, which has obviously proved to be a very more secure job. When we could finally open, I was down to 9 remaining staff, and we were still very limited. We were and still are very limited in what the programs we can have and how many people we can let in the building and that kind of stuff. In the meantime, during all this COVID stuff, our 30-year-old boiler has been having major problems and is no longer repairable. I'm not able to find parts for it. It's not a efficient boiler. I had the Energy Trust come out and do a study on it a while back, and they kind of let me know that it's basically a 65% efficient boiler, and that if I were to replace it with something more efficient in today's day and age, I would save nearly, their estimation, $2,000 a month in natural gas. And so we kind of we decided to move forward with that project because I can't repair this boiler. That project is costing us $105,000 again during COVID. The Energy Trust is going to pitch in $42,000 of that, but we have attained a loan for 70,000 of that to be paid off in 3 years. We are also aware that we need to regrout and caulk the pool shell. We tiled it in 2011, I believe, 10 years ago. That price tag is $78,000 plus a total drain and refill of the pool. So the reason I'm giving you all this quick history is that with all these expenses and our limited resources, I'm asking the council to please consider maybe a little bit of leniency on our water bill for the next couple of years. I'm not asking for a complete gift or anything like that, but we're just looking at some major expenses that I have no idea where the money's going to come from. And I really have a very strong desire to keep this pool going. And it would be a huge help if we could, if you guys could consider a little leniency on the water bill. I honestly have no idea where we're going to come up with that 70,000 or 78,000 to regrout price tag. I think that might be a little inflated due to COVID as well, but anyway, we know we need to do that, but I don't know where that money is going to come from at this point. So that's all I'm asking. And I thank you so much for your time in considering this request. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ann. I don't know if the mayor is back, but I don't think he heard any of your testimony.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, I apologize, Ann. My computer overheated and I was outside.
So Ann, I heard your testimony, and what we have done in the past for any of our residences and businesses in the city, and if anyone comes forward and they've had a leak in their system on their property of some sort, they ask to forego the huge water bill that they were responsible for, or half of it, or whatever. So what's your sense of urgency on this, of getting an answer from the city? Because I'm thinking, and I think the mayor would approve of this, of putting this on the agenda for our next meeting. And if you could do part of your testimony in writing and give that to us, or show up at the next meeting on the agenda, then we could all deliberate on it. Does that sound fair, Mayor? And does that sound fair, Ann?
I apologize, Ann. I did not hear your testimony. So it sounds like you have a water leak, or had a water leak.
So we do have leaks. It's an 82-year-old pool. So it's inevitable that we have leaks. However, and we know we need to regrout. As the weather warmed up, our leaking significantly lowered. Concrete swells and contracts with heat. And so with the weather warm, and we got our boiler, we're gonna get our boiler fixed here next month, or replaced next month. We believe that we can slow down the leaks significantly. And yes, when we did find that big leak in the filter pit, the city was extremely generous with us and paid us back for all the money we lost for 2 months. And yes, I very much appreciate that. And that was huge for us. What I'm looking at is, because I'm not able to make any money, and I'm not able to build on programs with just 9 staff, and Red Cross is limiting us on how we can train new staff. I'm just asking for a little bit of leniency on the water bill. I know that you have given us a phase-in process for the water bill to begin with.
Okay, I'm coming up to speed now. So we're talking about the Eisenschmidt pool here.
Yes, we are. I know that.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking to be paid back for any amount of leak. I'm looking, I guess I'm asking if maybe we're paying at 75% of our bill during that phase-in project. And maybe and we're supposed to go to 100% of that bill in July. And I'm basically just asking if we can slow that down a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree with Council President Morton too. Just put something in writing so we have it, and we'll put it on the agenda, and we'll discuss about not raising your rate in July for sure.
Okay, that sounds great to me, and I have no problem putting it in writing, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah,
And well, if that's on the agenda, but probably it would be a good thing to have Ann at the next meeting at the agenda time, I would think, to clarify any kinds of concerns we might have.
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Ann.
Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Council President Morton, for taking over. My computer heated up and it just shut it off, and it will not come on until it's cooled down. So
Hey,
I apologize.
The computer heating up is great. That's when the mayor gets heated up that we get all concerned.
So I was able to put up an umbrella outside, but I'm inside to cool it off, and then I'm gonna head back out here in a minute. So any other visitor comments? I figure that's
Yeah,
where we're at. Yes. Hi, Richard.
I'd like to comment.
Yes. Go ahead, Richard.
Again, I'm coming to the council to find out why violators of the ordinance on the city docks is not being enforced. There's 3 boats down there that have been down there for over 2 weeks. They were there during the last city council meeting, but I wasn't able to attend. So you've got boats that are down there that are there for well over 2 weeks. There's one boat down there from Canada. I can't tell if it's plugged into power, but I can't tell if there's anybody on board. There's another bayliner down there that's been down there since the 1st of the month that I haven't seen any activity on. And I just don't understand why they can't be cited, or at least I just don't understand. It's all these boats are in clear violation, but the city is doing nothing.
So we do have it documented. John, have we got any further on any thing drawn up for our docs?
Yeah, I was going to invite, yes, there has been some conversation between the police and our prosecutor, and I would have been, sorry with you, I'd invite Chief Greenway to be unmuted to talk about it for a second if you want to hear.
Yeah, in late March, we met with Sam Erskine to discuss this, and we're doing some research. The challenge is that we don't have 24-hour coverage of the docks, so we don't know when the boats arrive, and we can't cite them based upon estimates. So we're looking into the possibility of 2 solutions to this problem. One is the city hiring a harbor master or assigning somebody from the city as a single point of contact for the docks, to include even contracting it out to the Brad who runs the marina that can oversee that and have a better oversight of the ordinance times of when the boaters arrive. So that's solution number 1 that we're discussing. Solution number 2 would be to install a meter system that would allow for boaters to check in. They would then purchase a permit that, or not purchase, but receive a permit that would timestamp their arrival and allow the enforcement of the ordinances. So we are looking into that. We have other jurisdictions that Sam was going to look into, as well as Corporal Dustin King, who's our Coast Guard certified boat operator, and we're in the process. So we don't have an answer right now. I will tell you the officers, we are 4 officers down, full disclosure. We are short 4 officers, so we do not patrol the docks because we don't have the manpower to do that. When we are called, we respond down there, but we are responsive to the 911 calls throughout the community first and foremost. So we do, when we're summoned down there, respond. So Mr. Mason, I've offered this before, please call the non-emergency number if you have an issue, and officers will respond when they're clear to do that. But regular patrol of our police officers, we just don't have the manpower right now, and we're working on solutions to that. I know that is not a popular response that nobody wants to hear, but that's a reality in the world that we live in. So we will continue to do our best to contact the boaters. Oftentimes the uniform officers go down there themselves, and they do not have any luck in contacting the boaters. It's treated just like a house. And, we just can't enter onto a vessel without any type of warrant. So we are at, a point where we're frustrated, as well as Mr. Mason and the rest of the city members. So we are looking at long-term solutions to correct this problem. So that's where we're at. The next question before it's asked is, why isn't code enforcement down there? And I will tell you that the level of violence that our officers are encountering with boaters and other people, we do not want to subject our code enforcement officer who doesn't have the proper training or tools to be on a dangerous waterway where that person could easily be thrown into the water and drowned. So we have uniform officers who are trained to respond down there. So that was my decision, to no longer have our code enforcement down there encountering angry boaters when we're asking them to leave. And then the situation escalates to something that we're seeing on a national level, and we do not want that to happen. So hopefully, Mr. Mason, that kind of gives you some light at the end of the tunnel. Again, a solution for this would be to call the non-emergency police number and ask for an officer to respond down there. Thank you.
I
Well,
like
Chief Greenway.
well, the only, why can't an officer come by every 72 hours and document the boats that are down there, and then come back 72 hours later? If the same boats are there, they're in violation.
We do have documentation of the same boats being down there. I've been going out daily and looking, and I've seen, I didn't know there was a third. I noticed the black sail ship, and then the fishing boat, which is a commercial boat. Now, they absolutely have no right to be on the dock whatsoever if you're a commercial vessel, unless you are pre-approved through the city.
Yeah, that guy comes and goes.
Yeah, he moves his boat around too, but it's always in a different spot.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the challenge of that, Mr. Mayor, and everybody, again, you just mentioned it, he moves his boat around, he leaves. So I understand that they have to have a 14-day, where they leave. It is problematic, and this is a short-term solution, and we're not going to, we're not going to fix it right here on this meeting, and I'm not trying to deflect this, but we need a long-term solution if this is a priority for the city to correct.
Well,
and it not continue to fall on the police department's back when we're short staffing, when we're answering 911 calls and our complex investigations are going up. And I'm not making excuses, but the city has to make a decision whether they want to pay the money to have it properly monitored, because if an officer checks it within 72 hours, which they can, right now we're short and we don't have the manpower to assign an officer. And so they can check it and then come back, and we don't have a database and we don't have anything to track these boats. What we need is some type of permanent system that other jurisdictions are using that allows us to use that in a court of law to prove that they received the citation. And so everybody understands, a boater receiving a citation is just that, a boater receiving a citation. It doesn't mean that the boat has to leave or will leave. We can order it to leave, but we can't tow it. We're right back to the same challenges that we're faced with. And I'm as frustrated as everybody, because it's like we can't win in this situation, is what we're wanting. So yes.
Chief Greenway, I have a
Council
question
President Morgan, go ahead.
about towing the boats. You're getting your information from the Coast Guard and or from someone who's been on the Coast Guard, and that's a documented boat. Those are for documented boats that are documented. The boats that are that have state licenses are in a different situation. I've been checking through the Marine Board, and if we have a derelict boat, we can tow it where we want on our own, especially if it's in our own jurisdiction on our own property. We just can't set it adrift, which I understand is the issue. So anyway, I just would like you to follow up about the boat being documented, worldwide, and I can understand not towing that boat that is documented without going through the proper procedure. But state boats, I don't think so. So at this point, so it'd be interesting to follow up on that. But I do support number one option of having a harbor master there. And the reason that I support that is because our harbor master down at the marina and over at Sand Island is in total control over there. And I like that. I like that there is somebody accountable for the boat traffic there, and who has the know-how how to reach the state or the river patrol through the county. So I favor that. Whether we get a volunteer harbor master or what kind of harbor master we get, I'm not quite certain. And how much it's going to cost, we can always go back to the Marine Board and ask for a grant. We can also look at the Columbia River Yachting Association and ask for a grant. We can do those kinds of things. And I realize that this shouldn't fall in a police chief's lap at this point to go through the myriad of research and what to do. You already have done that. You've given us two options, and I favor number one. But I also think that with that, we can research some grants and take it a little further. That's my comment. And I have had no less than 25 calls from Richard Mason over the context of the 2 years that he's been calling in or more. So yeah, he would be a perfect candidate for a volunteer harbor master beyond a doubt. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Let me make one more comment here. If the chief is afraid of one of his code enforcement officers getting attacked or getting thrown in the water, what's to say that the so-called harbor master isn't at risk too?
So I'm just gonna we've discussed this, and Council President Morton, I'm gonna go with what he recommended, what Chief Greenway recommended, Richard, is that we maybe reach out to the East Coast, maybe Google search safe harbors and the harbor masters and what that looks like, because they have a whole different set of rules versus because they own the harbor, and we could just create a harbor essentially, and then that makes our rules a lot more tougher than what are currently in play. So I think if we just do a Google search on that, I agree wholeheartedly with Council President Morton. And I really don't want to further this discussion because we are working on it. Chief Greenway, if you could just have maybe Corporal King or whoever else you had, just kind of maybe do a Google search on, because back east is where the harbor masters really lie and live, in big harbors, and I'm sure have issues with other derelict boats trying to come move in.
Rick,
Okay.
I'm going to throw one other thing in. Now that we're going to enlarge our waterfront, we may have docks. So I think this process has gotten a lot more important just because what we're going to be doing down there. So I don't think we should slow up finding out what we can do. I think the importance is going to go way up.
The deal is we are all aware that we have an issue, and we are moving forward on this. I'm sorry. I apologize if it's not up to speed, and wish we could do something quicker, but we are working on it. So I'm going to ask, is there any other visitor comments?
I do not see any, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, our first item on the agenda will be to review If I Were Mayor student contestant entries. Lisa, do you have the ability to share your screen? I don't know if Lisa's on here.
Yes, I am here. Yeah. Matt
Okay.
just gave me co-host ability. Just one moment.
I'm gonna let you kind of just do the little bit of a presentation and just a review for our citizens, because we have seen this.
All right.
And these are on our city website too as well, right, Lisa? will
Yes,
be?
they're included in the packet.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, can you see that? Is that, am I
Yep.
in the right screen? Okay, great.
Yep.
So we had 6 participants this year, which is great. You know, you never know what you'll get with COVID or anytime. We had 2 entries for the poster. Let me go to the first one. Oh, this is not, I'm sorry, this is not the right.
Wrong packet.
Yes, that's
It
the kids
happens.
packet.
It happens.
Okay, here's the right one. Okay, so here's the
Yeah.
first. And posters are submitted by 4th through 5th grade students. This one had a lot of good ideas. Okay, just skim through these. And if anyone wants to go back and look, it's really easy in our packet. Here's our second poster. And we had 2 essays. Oh. So the first essay really focused on like learning labs for students, which this student had some great ideas. All of these students had really good ideas. It's interesting, things I never think about.
It is very interesting when I was reading through them.
All right, and here's the next one. This one, oh, sidewalks, really focused on sidewalks and the need for those for safety.
And actually, we have a grant for that between Sykes and Gable.
Great.
Okay.
And here are our digital presentations. So these were submitted as PowerPoint or I forgot what it's called in the Google Docs, some kind of slides, Google Slides. So this student focused on a lot of different areas on improving our community and what a mayor can be doing. And the other one focused on the library. I bet Margaret and her crew really liked this one, the importance of reading. Oops. She had some pictures here I'll share. Having more little libraries around town and how much she has learned from reading. So these were great. So the council already submitted their votes, so I could go deliver the boxes to the students, and Mayor Scholl will have a fun presentation tonight to tell them when to open their boxes, and they will have something distinct. I won't say yet in case anybody peeks in their box, but when they open their box, he'll tell them what is in there that they'll know they got first or second.
Yep. Okay, Lisa, thank you very much for allowing us to do this publicly. Of course, we've already looked at them and voted, and very insightful, and we will be meeting with the individuals later tonight in our regular session and announcing the winners in a surprise box.
Yes, exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yep. Okay. All right. On to our next item on the agenda. Employee length of service recognition would be Kathy Payne with 20 years, our master recorder. Kathy earned her master's recorder a few years ago, 3 years ago. You know, Kathy is just wonderful to be around, is the best way to explain it. She, you know, you come into this thing and you know you got a job to do, but she has also become a friend of mine as well. I like to consider her a friend. So she's definitely a joy to be around, and she does her job very, very well. And then our next one is Gretchen Coldrup, who is our youth librarian. And I met Gretchen probably about 6 months into being mayor. She gave a presentation. And holy cow, I had never met Gretchen. And it was just like, you did that absolutely wonderful. You're our youth librarian there. You work with the kids and working with Shauna. And you're just doing a lot of good things for our community. And we truly, truly appreciate you, Gretchen. And so would any counselors like to make a comment first?
Can I jump in about Gretchen?
Yes.
Well, Gretchen works at the library. The thing that becomes important in that is how much new she has brought to it. As you know, we've got little programs for little kids. We've got the business of trying to get to makerspace. We've gotten enlargements in area. It's a whole librarian attack group that has improved that space and the programs and the connections between the library, kids, and the rec center, and along with the schools. So she hasn't been here that long, but the amount of work that's happened with the new programs is incredible. You've got to go check it out. Hopefully, we're getting started a little bit better with the covert going away, but there's one creative person with a lot of creative programs.
Hey, thank you, Councilor Topaz.
Yeah, I have something to say, Rick, Councilor Morton. And one of the things that, if we watch evening news and we think about the anchors that have been on evening news all the way back to Walter Cronkite, all the people that I have ever known on evening news. They are as solid could be, and their knowledge is unbelievable. And Kathy Payne, you are the anchor of the city. You have been through so much, and you've been through several city managers. You've been through countless council people and staff, and you are the mainstay. You are reliable. You are trustworthy, and you are just a huge resource in terms of knowledge. I always go to you whenever I have any kind of problem. And I don't know how many times I've gone to you with, did you find a pair of glasses? And I look down and my glasses, or you say my glasses are up on top of my head or in my pocket or whatever. Anyway, you fix everything. And so I just find you an incredible asset to the city. And thank you so much for everything you do.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I enjoy working here more than anything, anywhere I've ever worked. And I appreciate all the people that I work with and for. So thank you very much. I appreciate your words.
Kathy, I once, it wasn't that long ago, made a comment about your job description, how it not only fell short of what you do, it was so minuscule compared to what you actually do. It was frightening. And the amount of work you do is frightening. And I don't think most people realize how many different areas you touch continuously. And the anchor is, I would almost call you're the foundation, the rock of this place, not just an anchor. You don't move. So really, congratulations. But you really got to fix up that job description because it nowhere near comes close to what you do.
Thank you, Councilor Topaz.
Well, and I just want to say congrats to both of you guys. Huge milestones for both. And I just wanted to express my appreciation for Kathy always being really kind to me from the very first day that I walked in with my application to run for city council. And she was like, who is this lady? But always very friendly and kind. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilor Berkeley.
Yeah, I want to echo Kathy, what Councilor Chilton said about how you, as our elections officer, manage that whole process. And helped make what can be perhaps a rather intimidating process helpful with the information that you provided, and all is available to answer your questions, and also for the resources you provided. This thing, which I use regularly to increase my biceps, not working though. The new counselor packet, but since arriving on the being elected and joining the council, how you have always provide information in a timely manner and keep things posted, and just really enjoy your even keel and demeanor. And I did want to check, you were recently elected or still are elected to a statewide position for recorders?
Yeah, the Oregon Association of Municipal Recorders. I'm actually now the immediate past president.
Immediate past president.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, well, thank you. It's nice to have that recognition at state level for our community for doing that. So, and it says a lot that you would work towards not only the certification, but for that leadership position. And then Gretchen, I had the opportunity to work with during my brief tenure on the library board, including some work on the access committee, how we can continue to improve access to the library resources. And the few meetings that we had, I found that Gretchen always came prepared, some great ideas, but I think most importantly, not only had a concern and consideration for access for our youth patrons, but for our wider community as well. And so just really glad to have Gretchen working, and the partnership that she has had with Shauna has been excellent, and I think can only continue to get better. So thanks, Gretchen.
Thank you all. I feel really lucky to get to work for the families and for this community. And I also wanted to, as a coworker, give a shout out to Kathy, because all of those presentations that have happened at City Council, she was really helpful in walking me through all of the sort of like paperwork and bureaucratic processes. So I would not be able to do that without Kathy. Thank you.
High five, Gretchen.
Okay, I'm actually gonna give your supervisors is Margaret, yes, and John. I'd like you to just say a few words, and Margaret, I'm gonna allow you to say a few words. Have the final word, your supervisors. So either one, John Walsh.
Yeah, sure. I can certainly pile on and say positive, wonderful things about Kathy. She's been a great asset, and I'd be lost without her as far as scheduling and organization and creating that trail of permanent record, which is just super valuable and very appreciative. So.
Yep. Okay, Margaret.
I'm here, but I can't start my video, so I'm going to hide behind my name.
Oh, she's even got a video. Wow.
Well, okay. Matt's going to let me come in.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, your video. So we can see you. Hi.
Well, first I want to say thank you to Kathy. Kathy has all the answers. I don't know something, I ask her, and she's always very helpful. So I appreciate you, Kathy. And Gretchen has been just a sheer delight to have on our staff at the library. And I can echo all the other things that have been said about the initiatives that she creates and follows through with, whether it's access to the library or STEM programming for youth. I also want to say that she's attracted funds to these efforts and has successfully brought in $25,000 in grants for the STEM programming. And so she's just has just been a real boon to our youth programming, and she's a wonderful colleague too. On the library staff, we are a pretty small, close-knit group, and So I just want to say that she adds a lot to those team dynamics. And she had a short stint as the interim library director a year and a half ago when I was on a medical leave. And
that's right. Yes.
she brought the team together, and they ran the shop just fine. In fact, I began to wonder maybe, but yeah, it was great. And so thank you, Gretchen.
All right.
Thanks,
I love
Margaret.
the respect. I love the respect there. Okay. Again, congratulations and thank you for your service. And we value you both very, very much. Okay, so now we'll go on to our next item on the agenda, presentation of Columbia River Fire and Rescue Award to Officer Hartless and Officer Macy. There we are. You have to unmute yourself, gentlemen. There you go.
Hello.
Okay. Hello.
Hey, how you doing, Council? This is my name is Joel Medina. I am the fire chief for Columbia River Fire Rescue.
Hi, Joel.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to come before you today. This is a very special award that we'd like to give out, and it's well due, it's well earned, and I'd like to pass this on to my Division Chief of Emergency Medical Service, Chief Halsey.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council and Mayor, for entertaining us today. But Columbia River Fire and Rescue would like to present Officers Hartless and Officers Massey with our Lifesaver Award for their action morning of February 7th, 2021. Officer Hartless and Officer Massey were both able to respond quickly, provide high-quality CPR and quick defibrillation, which provided the foundation for the course of actions of the incident. These actions allowed our officers to continue providing care and support the return of spontaneous circulation all the way to the receiving facility of the individual. It's these quick and decisive actions by our citizens and our first responder partners that help strengthen our EMS system and our ability to provide life-saving care and treatment to our constituents. As an agency, we would like to thank St. Helens Police Department Officers Hartless and Officer Massey once again for their commitment to the protection of the community and supporting its health and well-being. Thank you.
If I may add one more thing.
You sure may.
Is that I want you to know that public safety, the fire department, is just one half. The association, the relationship between fire and police is essential in order to provide the appropriate coverage to the constituents of this area and the individuals that we're charged with protecting. Not only do we value that, but this is just one example of the many ways that police and fire come together to provide the safety that the people of Columbia County are so desperately in search of. We're here, we're committed to work together. And again, I can't say enough for the police department and the sheriff's office and everything that is done here in St. Helens. And it's very nice to see that such a well-oiled machine is happening here for public safety.
Well, gentlemen, it's well deserved. There's no doubt about it that you guys saved a life because of your quick actions. And it amazes me that you guys do this day in and day out. And you just do it just because it's the right thing to do. And it's well deserved today. So congratulations, Officer Hartless and Massey.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's definitely an honor.
I just want to just echo that. Thank you guys. This is my favorite story to share in town when I talk to people. It's just amazing. And I'm thankful that we have you guys here, and this is the community that we live in, that my parents live in, that my kids are in. So thank you guys for working together and just doing what needs to be done. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And Chief Medina, let's get together for lunch soon, okay?
Absolutely. You got it, sir.
Okay.
And thank you so much, Chief Medina, and everybody on fire and paramedics and everything. I mean, obviously we couldn't have done it without you guys. And like you said, we're a well-oiled machine. I mean, we're out there with you guys all day and all night. And it's just an honor to work with you guys. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. Feelings
all
good.
Right.
Very proud of you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
That warms my heart. Just I can't say enough about our first responders and the respect they have for one another and the job they do. Okay, next item on our agenda is review proposed updates to building code. Mike DeRosa, our building official.
All right, good afternoon. I guess I'll start my video here. Sorry.
All right.
All right, 1 second. Okay, and I think Matt is giving me to share screen here. And so, okay. Hopefully everybody can see that up there.
Yep.
All right, perfect. All right, well, thank you, Mayor Scholl and councilors for the time this afternoon. And I just wanted to open up the discussion on some updates that have happened on the state building codes. And so just going to have a few topics to discuss. I'll kind of go over a brief a description of some of the updates and changes that have happened with regards to BCD's authority, and then moving down what that means, and as we need to look forward to what that means for our local code and adoption of some of those items. So 2021 was a year in which we the state needed to update the residential code. This happens on a cycle. It actually was supposed to happen last year, but as with most things, COVID got in the way. And so those came out April of this year. And you might ask the question, did it all have to do with Chapter 1 of the code? And the answer to that is no. However, they have not published the entire code that they have adopted, just Chapter 1 at this point. And another unique situation is usually there is a 6-month grace period for implementation of these types of provisions. In this case, it was a hard date of April 1st. So these are in place right now. And so we'll just go right into next slide. This is the OSSC. Basically, the scope of work is the scope of authority under BCD, Building Codes Division down at the state, is getting kind of reorganized. I'll put it in that way. They've kind of categorized different items. So you have a scope here under the ORSs. That's statewide application. Everybody, everywhere in the state of Oregon has this applied. Then they have ordinances are optional for local adoption. Those are items that the state still has standards for, but is determined that they do not need to be applied statewide. You have a third one, matters not available for local regulation under statutory authority of state building code. And that can be somewhat confusing, but it basically says that the state doesn't have authority. However, we at the local level still potentially have authority to regulate some of those items listed there. And then the fourth, and we won't really talk about this in any great detail, but as matters preempted by state code, those are items that are just not available for us to change or otherwise adopt locally. They are statewide mandates. And so that's the OSSC, the structural code, which is our commercial code. This is very similar language that we would see in the residential code. And so to help kind of put that in a visual, I've got this slide here. Basically, the center of the slide is those are all things that shall be applied statewide. The minimum standards, as we put it. Then there's the this circle here, which is things that we as St. Helens, you as a council can adopt locally if so choose. And then these are the items outside of all those circles that are outside of that original ORS that gives BCD, Building Codes Division, the authority. And you might recognize a few of these as things that we have in our area, like floating docks and floating structures. Some of those items we already have adopted language on. We aren't going to have to mess with those. And so what this kind of boils down to is where the building code is going to be applicable. Here are the items at which I'm recommending that we adopt locally. Now, we don't need to adopt those today. This is just basically trying to get the conversation started so that before we go out and seek legal counsel and pay them to come up with language for us, I don't bring it to you later and you guys say, well, what about this or that or other items that maybe I wanted to have the conversation now. And if there's any opinions or concerns or things that you don't see on here or do see on here, if we want to have any questions or discussion, this would be the time to start talking about them. Any questions on what we've talked about so far, or specifically any of the items on this particular slide?
So just to be clear, these are things that you're recommending that we allow. So for instance, flagpoles greater than 25 feet in height. You're saying that we should allow.
Yeah, so what it's recommending is that we adopt local regulation over these items.
Okay.
And so in this list, the state building codes will still be applicable. These were items that the state said don't need to apply to every community within the state. We'll leave it up to the local authority to determine if they want to regulate things like retaining walls greater than 4 feet.
Okay.
And so these are a list of items that I do believe that we should regulate in our community. And then the one outside of that for state building codes is tsunami loads. And that was strictly based on we are not in a tsunami inundation zone.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now, if we adopt these items and regulate them, it's very clear that the state building code is what's applicable. That's the applicable standard to these items. So we don't get to create our own local code. We just simply are reserving our ability to regulate these items within our community.
Now you have a category called tanks. Is that fuel tanks, water tanks, air tanks, inside, outside?
Yeah, and so these descriptions, yeah, that involves a lot of tanks actually, but these descriptions are very brief and descriptive. I can go back up to, here is one. If you look here on item 4, tanks that are located exterior to and not attached to or supported by a regulated building. So the building codes division has already said that ones that are located inside of a building, attached to or reliant on the building structure to hold them up, those are already regulated. These would be ones that would be to the exterior of the building. These would be ones that would be not supported by another structure, or regulated structure, I should say.
Not by what's in the tank, but by how it's structurally held up.
Well, that would kind of come, I mean, if we adopt this to regulate tanks that are outside of the building, then it would be a matter of the state codes being applied, and the state codes do determine there is a difference between one that's holding hazardous materials as opposed to maybe one that's holding water, for instance, or air, for instance. So they would be dealt with the way that the code would deal with them if they were inside of a building or being supported by a regulated building.
So flagpoles greater than 25 feet in height.
Yes.
So that would mean that you can't put one up higher than 25 feet?
No, it would just mean that we would have design standards that would be applicable to a flagpole greater than 25 feet in height. Anything under 25 feet in height is not available for us to regulate at all.
Okay, what about people that already have something up that's over 25 feet?
Anything that was allowed to exist at the time that the code was adopted would still be allowed to exist. We don't go backwards in time and determine that they need to now bring something up to code, unless we do have dangerous buildings and structures code. If there's something imminent going on, we have pathways there to correct those kind of issues. But in general, anybody that has a 30-foot flagpole up right now wouldn't otherwise be, if this was to go forward, they would still be fine. They wouldn't have to do anything in addition.
Because sometimes Old Glory needs to fly sometimes Old Glory needs to fly over the roof too, and most roofs on a 2-story are well above 25 feet. So, okay. I kind of have an issue with that a little bit. I really do. I think anybody who's putting up a flagpole already understands what significance and why they're doing it.
Sure.
Try to make sure it's done right.
And again, none of this is to prohibit any of these items. It's just simply to regulate.
A lot of times you guys say I need engineering on
that. In the case of flagpoles, it would just depend on the size of them. And again, when the state building code would be applicable still in this case. So we would just reference the Oregon Structural Specialty Code if somebody was to put one in. And again, this is for ones that are over 25 feet in height.
Okay.
Mike?
Yes.
Mike, this is Doug Morton. And one of the things that I I'm concerned about is is this more an aesthetic kind of decision, or is it a safety issue? 25 feet from, as the mayor is alluding to, on top of a building, I would imagine would have some kind of issues with electrical lines and that kind of thing. What is it, more aesthetic or more safety in your mind?
Yeah, so the building codes are primarily set up around safety. That's what they're mostly looking at, is safety. And then there are other codes that are looking at other aspects of the building, such as energy and that sort of thing. But for building codes, it's primarily looking for safety. And so in terms of the flagpoles greater than 25 feet, it's again not a prohibition or trying to prevent anybody. It's more of a threshold at which the community we would say we are interested in a 26-foot flagpole and ensuring that that is going to stay upright when we get winds that we get here locally, and making sure that it wouldn't fall over and impact another structure or somebody's own property. So yes, I would say it's mostly revolved around safety.
Well, I'm going to play the devil's advocate. I've got a flagpole that's 32 foot long, and I've planted it at 9 feet in the ground. Is it the total length of the flagpole or only above the ground?
It would be measured from the ground to the top of the flagpole.
Okay, same flagpole on top of a building. Now it's measured from the whole length of the flagpole. Basically, do critical point of mounting, right?
Correct. And in the case of a flagpole on the building, that would be regulated, as it would be if it was a regulated structure, that would be regulated over.
Okay, so it's covered under the structure as compared to under the flagpole business.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Could you explain to me a little bit more about the silo one? Because it doesn't seem like it would make sense to me. Why would someone build a new silo and not store anything in it? Does that happen? I know old silos, right?
Yeah. We don't get a lot of silos and elevator type systems in our area, but what that, and again, it points to that are not exempted by Oregon law. So most of your agricultural areas that are building those types of structures are already exempt from these rules. And we don't have those types of areas in our community. But what I would point to is we do have industrial areas where elevators and silos do become applicable. And the state of Oregon in this they're kind of changing a little bit of their scope, which has been, I would use the term traditional for the past several decades of building codes. And they've really determined that buildings and structures that are not occupied by people on a regular basis are not under the state's scope of authority. And that's a slight shift because we've regulated buildings and structures of all sorts, whether they had occupants or no occupants, for years. And so many of these items just previously were regulated under the previous code cycle. The only change now is that it's up to each individual municipality to determine if they want to regulate these things, because there are going to be areas in our state where it may not be needed to regulate these items. And I would point more to rural areas where, for instance, tanks. I don't think too many people would be too worried about tanks that are sitting out in the middle of nowhere. But as we live in a more condensed city and have closer setbacks on our property lines, those tanks do actually have an effect on their neighboring properties in the case that they fail. And that's why we would want to regulate those things to make sure that they're being constructed to meet a minimum standard and stay up. So, any other questions on this one? Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. So again, that was for local adoption. State building code is applicable. Now, these are those matters that are outside of statutory authority. And so these are the items that I'm suggesting that we adopt locally to regulate locally. I also have a few items that are not recommended to adopt. And then, like I said, there are some items that are already on that list that we currently have adopted locally.
I'm looking at hydraulic flood control structures. Is any of that covered under wetlands? I mean, they have a lot to do with streams and stuff like that. Are they exempt from the hydraulic flood control structures, or is there overlap?
I'm doing my own kind of research on this right now because there's a wide range of flood control structures used for different purposes. Primarily what I'm finding is this would be probably, again, more applicable in our industrial areas. That to answer specifically about wetlands, if there was private development in the wetlands that required those types of structures, then yes. But otherwise, if it was on public lands or anything of that nature, those would be regulated by another agency.
Is the dikes around large tanks, so if the tank fails, the fluid doesn't go beyond, is that under structures or flood control?
That would be under the, yeah, that's not necessarily referencing the hydraulic flood control structures for tanks. Containment is something that's determined through our fire code and through our building code.
Okay.
Could you elaborate on the transitional housing accommodations? You probably knew I was going to go there, huh?
No, it was, this is one this is one that I've had to kind of learn a little bit about as well. With regards to building code, this is going to mostly probably look more towards the same codes that we have for parks and that for parks. And if there's transitional housing accommodations being put into a regulated structure, this is mostly going to be based on just, again, safety, where those kind of areas are, where that's allowed, how much of it is allowed is really going to be determined. Probably, I had a brief conversation with our city planner about this, and it's mostly going to be an allowance through their department. The only time that we would get involved as a building department is just to look at if there's camps that are created, looking at them from a sanitation and safety standpoint. And then again, if somebody's utilizing a regulated structure for transitional housing purposes, again, looking at it from a safety standpoint as far as means of egress, fire alarms, that sort of thing.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That clarified it for me.
Some of the items that I'm not recommending are just simply because we already have regulation on those in some other fashion and we don't need to double up. So for instance, detached tents and other membrane structures, those are those items for events or short-term temporary type settings that the fire marshal and state fire code already currently address. And so there's just no need for us, at least the building department, I should say, for us to be involved with that. Employee qualifications, that's just standard language out of the back of the code book under Appendix A. We have our own local qualifications that we have. Same with fire districts. We have a fire district. We don't need to adopt Appendix D for it. Construction located within public right-of-ways and public utility towers, again, are both ones that are reviewed and looked at by other agencies. And then, of course, we have our currently adopted ones. Any other questions about these?
Yeah, I have a question about floating structures.
Yes.
And say like a mooring dockage of some sort with a gangway that has access to it. And does anything come into the ordinance of noise with that? Because as you know, the Columbia River has a certain amount of a swell and wind chop and boat swell. And these things make so much noise if they're falling apart and or not maintained, that they become very, it becomes an aggravation to any of the residences that live around that. Is there any issues that you've had with that in the past?
I've never had that brought to my attention before. Our floating structures code, just as you know, is in desperate need of updating. But we do have noise ordinances, and we also have maintenance ordinances within our jurisdiction that if, you know, the structure is not being maintained to a certain level and creating nuisances such as noise, there are pathways for us to take to mitigate those or abate those.
Yeah, thank you. I'll pass that on to people who have complained about those issues, and they'll get a hold of you, I'm sure.
Okay. Okay. All right. So probably one of the more significant changes in the code is right of entry and stop work orders. Stop work orders were traditionally used to do just what they say, stop work in order to bring something into compliance, usually relating with either not getting your permits to begin with or a dangerous situation at which needs to get addressed immediately. And then right of entry has been one that has also been removed and traditionally allowed us to, if we see something that isn't contrary to the code, enter onto the premises in order to, you know, make a determination and further push towards compliance. And so both of these areas have been removed. Now, locally, we already have very similar language in our code, but I am going to ask that our legal counsel take a look at that language, make sure it still stands, and make sure it doesn't need any updating as well. Any questions about right of entry or stop work orders? All right, next slide. So this is kind of the last part about the state Oregon code that I'll go over. Nothing in this code limits a municipality's ability to require application of its own ordinances or to enforce its own ordinances. So for many years, the building permit has been used as teeth to say that you need to comply with development code, that you need to, if they fall out of any kind of compliance with our own local code, we were able to go in and push for that through our abilities through the building permit. They have long talked about not allowing that. In fact, the state was no longer backing up anybody that would, for instance, not give a certificate of occupancy because the fire access was incomplete. Building Codes Division decided that that was not in our scope of work and not allowed by us, so they wanted to remove it, and this finally does remove it. And so what we're going to be looking at locally is how that affects our municipal code. What does that look like for our enforcement or our application of that enforcement in our local code? And so that'll come, and to be quite honest with you, I don't know what that's going to look like. There may be nothing that we can do, and there may be some language we can put in there in order to make sure that we have enforcement of all of our local ordinances. And so that's what we'll be talking with our legal counsel about. And the last slide is just the adoption of the 2019 fire code. Our code currently has adopted the 2014 code. It was brought to our attention by CRF&R that it was out of date, and they recommended that we update it to the newest code, which is my recommendation as well. I also have Tad Peterson, our fire marshal, and myself are reviewing our fire code in its entirety. And there may be other housekeeping or updated items through that as well. But the major one is just going to be adopting that, the latest code. So, and that is the end of what I have to share with you guys.
All right.
Is there any questions?
No, thank you, Mike. You did a great job. Appreciate it.
Good. Well, I appreciate you guys' time.
Yeah, I'll say so. Thanks. No, I'm just so glad after looking at this that there's not a building commission to which a counselor is assigned in addition to the planning commission. Seeing this stuff, it just reinforces my admiration for the work that you and the department do. trying to keep track of all this stuff. So just very, very impressive that you have a handle on this at all, and very important work. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
And it will be coming back to us and drawn up. After
Yes,
it comes
That's
from the
correct. Yeah,
attorney.
this is just, again, this
Yeah.
is kind of to get the conversation started. If there was anything that anybody wanted to bring up as far as direction to go, that was my hope here, was to be able to walk away from this, to be able to go to our legal counsel with a clear intent of what we want to do. And,
I just wanted Councilor Berkeley to know he wasn't out of the woods.
Thank you much, Mayor Schultz. So no, yeah. Well, if you're looking for direction, then too, I suppose it just sounds like the following, pursuing those items that you have recommended for adoption for to look at, and not to look at the ones that you're not recommending for adoption. I wouldn't have any basis to question your judgment on that. So I hope that the rest of the council would agree to moving forward with those.
Well, separate asylum. I mean, a silo thing. No, I'm just kidding.
well, I appreciate the confidence in me, but please ask questions, or if you guys do have any recommendations or opinions on it, please share them with me so that I can get those incorporated.
Checking up on the silo business. In the Midwest, there's a lot of flour or grain silos that blow up. Does this include fire hazards or just structural?
It would include both, because the building code addresses fire hazards as well, at least in new construction.
Because again, depending what you're storing in those, they could become one fantastic bomb.
Yeah.
And typically you don't ventilate those machines.
Yes.
All right, Michael, good work. And thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a good afternoon.
Yep. Okay, so next item on our agenda is a semi-annual report from the planning division. Jacob Greichen, our city planner.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Jacob.
And this is going to be a bit of me and a bit of associate planner dim show. So let me share screen. We'll get this started. Okay, so you should be able to see the screen here.
Yep.
So this is our semi-annual report on the strategic plan and other items. I'm going to start with some of the strategic plan items that I have been the primary shepherd of, and something we've talked about quite a bit, and Councilor Berkeley alluded to, was the 2021 code amendments. It's mostly done. The ordinance is to first reading tonight, and we anticipate adoption or the rules to be effective, on June 4th, which is ahead of the deadline at the end of June. So I'm pleased with that. And it's going to be interesting to see how many cities don't make the deadline. Luckily, we shouldn't make the news for that. So that's well on its way. That was a pretty big monster and a huge component of my personal work efforts in the last 6 months. Another thing on the strategic work plan is the North 11th and 10th Street Bluff, also kind of informally known as Jacob's Bluff, just based on my experience with it before the city purchased it. Just a couple photos on there to give you a sense of topography. So here's the bluff looking overhead. It's composed of various lots, and there's some rights of way in there, and then the street actually goes through some of the lots. So there's a little bit of cleanup in there. These two photos, this one here is looking this way. You can see one of the buildings right there. And then this one here is looking this way over these wetlands. Haven't really started working on this, and we'll see how some of the other city projects go before we get cooking on that one. Something else that was on my to-do list, not included or not represented in the slides, was the floodplain amendments, but that's all done, so not something to worry about. And Jenny, we're a two-person department, and she does shepherd some stuff more than I. Some of these things she'll talk about, I have some involvement in, but I'm not one of the shepherds, so she has more knowledge than me. So I'm going to let her talk about some of her strategic plan stuff. So Jenny, if you could.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Jacob. So the first thing, we've completed a couple things since our last report. Believe it or not, that was in October of last year. So we have since then adopted the Urban Renewal Major Amendment. Most of you were involved in that process, but just a reminder, Armstrong World Industries left a major mark on our revenue projections for the Urban Renewal Agency. And so we were directed at the time to pursue an amendment that would help bring in additional revenues to the agency, to bring those revenues back to what they were originally projected to be at this time. And so that was adopted in November 2020. We've also, since October, adopted our St. Helens Industrial Business Park parcelization and finance plan. That was in January 2021. So thank you for unanimously adopting that. You were all involved in that, I believe. So those are two major projects on the strategic plan that we can mark the checkbox for. Next slide. So this is going to be my major project over the next year and a half. Riverwalk Phase 1, design and construction. As you should all know, we just kicked off this project's technical advisory committee last week. So John and I are co-managing this project. And actually just this morning, we kicked off the streets and utilities project that Sue Nelson is managing. And so I will be involved in that and to help coordinate the two projects together. But really, this is going to take the brunt of our focus, especially over the next few months with this work order 1 that Mayor Reed is assisting us with. So that's obviously a strategic plan item. And just so you're all aware, we do have an upcoming public forum on this topic in particular. There will be lots of outreach that Crystal and Cameron are going to help us with, but that forum is going to be on May 19th, so the third Wednesday in May at 6 p.m. This will be the first public outreach event for this project of 2. And so we're also going to launch an online survey to gather some feedback about what design elements the Riverwalk should contain. So more to come there. And I get excited whenever any part of my day gets to work on this project. And so really, really happy about this one. Next slide. So the Bennett Building, this has been an ongoing project that started with the redesign of the inside of the utility billing department that Matt started. And so you may remember we hired a historic preservation architect specialist who helped us with the facade design, and we approved kind of phase 1 of that work, which was just replacement of the windows. So those white transom windows that you see above the door and above the storefront windows, and then also the storefront windows are being replaced. Right now they're in fabrication. So their anticipated delivery and install is late April, early June. And so that's a project on the strategic plan that we are getting very close to finishing. And we also got our building permit since October. So thanks, Mike, if he's still on. So this is another project on the strategic plan that is taking a lot more of my time than I anticipated. This is the Columbia Pacific Food Bank relocation. This is a $1.5 million grant that we were receiving on behalf of the food bank. The city is the recipient of the funds, and then we kind of pass through to the food bank through this project. And you may remember we awarded our construction bid contract to J.H. Kelly. They have begun demo work. And so if you've driven by recently, the old barn structure has been removed from the facade. It's looking pretty noticeable now that this project is underway. You kind of see the underlying features of the building now that stuff on the facade has been removed. They did some asbestos abatement that just wrapped up. Our electrical permits are in process, and I'm seeing firsthand how many requests for information and submittals a construction project like this has. I think we're up to 10 requests for info and 10 submittals. So I'm just witnessing a large construction project firsthand, and it's been a learning experience and also very informative. So really cool project that is about a third way of the way through their budget. So next slide. So fittingly, this is on the agenda for John to discuss. I've been working with him on the Millard Road request for proposals. So this is the solicitation for developers to submit proposals on the city-owned Millard Road property. If you remember back in March, we did a little bit of goal setting with Echo Northwest. The draft will hopefully be approved by this body today. And then we will open solicitation in May through June. And so I will be the contact on this RFP and help developers answer any questions they might have about the site, or ask John if it involves him. And he can talk through the specifics of the RFP. I think it's the next agenda item. So next slide. I think it's back to Jacob. Oh no, one more slide. So as you all know, I also assist with a lot of capital project management. And so this slide is just to sort of capture some of those grants that I've been managing related to those capital projects. We've got the 2 grants for the Riverwalk Phase 1. And then we're working on our submittal for the low interest loan. I'm assisting John with that. There will be a presentation in June to the Business Oregon board for that low interest loan, and that will fund those riverfront district improvements that we've already started design work on. We were unsuccessful with our community grants program ask. This was a trail feasibility study from Scappoose to St. Helens. We reached out to the county and Scappoose and got their letters of support on this. Unfortunately, it's a new program, and so there were a lot of requests for money from this program. We do anticipate reapplying. I think it's a really great project, and I still think it's competitive. It's just that there were so many other great projects that have been waiting to get funded. The board at the time also prioritized funding capital projects as opposed to planning projects, and ours was just a feasibility study. And so I think better luck next time on that one, I think. Also, this was on the strategic plan for us to pursue Gray Cliffs in water facility design assistance from the Oregon State Marine Board. I think COVID has sort of delayed this program a bit. I haven't heard a lot of contact from them. And so that's just sort of a pending item. It's still on my list, and I still think it's a priority for the city. But given everything else happening, it's just sort of taken a back burner. But I still think that this is something we want to pursue. Next slide. Great. Now it's the fun stuff.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. So we're going to talk about all the other stuff going on, and you know, it's good that Jenny has these interesting things that she gets excited about to work on, because she also has a lot of mundane stuff to work on, like building permits. We do have a lot of building permits coming in, but the neat thing about reviewing building permits for houses, just houses, is it's a front row seat to really watching the city develop. And so I have some photos in here that shows some development over time, just so this presentation was a little more interesting. And building permits are up, as you probably are aware. And the other thing I just wanted to mention in some of these photos is, you know, working here a long time, including before the Great Recession, we've seen a lot of these properties kind of sleep, including Elk Ridge Phase 6, which this is a photo here, as you can see, from 2013. And it's one of these properties that kind of sat for a while and then just boom, 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 you know, they start being developed. So, and this is kind of a weird one. A lot of you probably don't recognize this angle. But Elk Ridge is on Hankey Road. I know Mayor Scholes kind of mentioned this at previous meetings. So here we are in 2013, sat like this for a long, long time. Fast forward a few years, they're doing some grading work. Hey, the street's paved and stuff. And then more recently, wow, they're building houses there now. So it's just kind of interesting to see things evolve over time. Another example, now this should be a familiar street to you. This is North Vernonia Road, looking north. And look at this row of trees here. Oh, what's going on there? Well, I don't know. Let's fast forward in time a little bit and going, we have a fence there now and some houses. Now, one thing that you don't see very well is there's a little pedestrian path that goes into this site. And if we walked up the street, went down there, and we turned back time, we would see this field. Now, if we were to go back to where we are now, well, it's not a field anymore, is it? This picture is really striking to me, that shows, how different things can look, and really not that great a spans of time. So this is the Emerald Meadows subdivision. It was controversial for a while, but things have settled now that it's largely built out, and it was built out pretty fast. Same subdivision, though this is from the north, from Pittsburgh Road. And this picture isn't quite in the same place. The people let me take a picture from their deck in this case. This one's to the side, but just shows you the stark differences as St. Helens continues to develop and grow. So let's some other stuff. There's the eightplex proposed by the 6th Street Park. That's moving along really well. I think the building permit's close to being issued. It's through planning at the very least. This is the Planning Commission Interview Committee. Some years, not much action, but this year we did have quite a bit of time consumption in December, selecting a new planning commissioner. And some of the last efforts of our past counselor Carlson. APO data, what the heck is that? Well, that's address property owner. We have been helping the building department with that for their e-permitting system. So the planning department, we're a 2-person department, but we're all over the place. This is an RV park proposed by Mark Comfort off of Kavanaugh, kind of behind Les Schwab Tire Centers. In the last 6 months, the plans have been advancing, and I think the building permit from the county is very close to being issued. This is a property that will be annexed fairly soon now. Some more stuff. This here represents an area in Holton that is kind of a big old mess. These are the center court condos along 18th Street. And all these properties, well, this condo project from the 90s was supposed to be much larger. Something happened, there was a bankruptcy, and then the judge ordered property ownership amongst the different lenders, and it created these illegal partitions, just a big mess. And finally, things are getting cleaned up. The folks who own the Running Dogs brewery, they purchased this property and are building a home here and building a small production facility there, and that'll really help clean things up. I'm very glad about that. Another project going on right now is on the corner of Industrial and McNulty Way. It's on the other side of the street from Columbia 911. This is the Control Solutions site. Industrial development, we love to see that. Another property that's kind of been sleeping with some stuff happening behind the scenes is just south of the Crestwood Manufactured Home Park. They wanted to divide it for a residential subdivision, but there's a bunch of wetlands that are causing them some problems. Luckily, I can say these aren't the city rules that are creating problems in this case. It's really the Army Corps of Engineers. So Armstrong is a very important industrial property. And last month, you may remember me talking about some lot line adjustments. They wanted to move some property lines around. And Armstrong, there's a third party that was trying to do that. Armstrong finally said, well, you know what, we're going to pick up the ball and do that. And essentially what's going on is this upper part here, this line was created by a summary judgment, a court order. And this upper part, the remediation has been taken care of, so someone can purchase that and hopefully bring it back to its employment and utility and tax-based grandiose time when it was helping us out with that stuff. And then the outer portion still is uncertain on the level of pollution. So that'll, Armstrong will keep that. So that's the good news. There's just something moving here. What I don't know is how soon an actual industry is going to move into that site. There's an investment company purchasing it. So for all I know, they'll purchase it and it'll sit there for a year or two stale still. But there is movement on that. Semling's Pharmacy, of course, this was an arcade for the last several years. We have a permit to turn this into a mart, actually. So we're glad to see some development in the Holton area. Speaking of development in the Holton area, there is the recent veterinarian clinic that was built. And what they've done in the last 6 months, they've proposed to create a couple parcels for sale. We haven't had a lot of bites on it, but you know, we'll see what happens over time. You've probably seen the for sale signs for these lots up there. Another thing that's making a lot of news is grocery outlet, well underway. The building is up. Signs aren't up that yet, so you wouldn't know it was a grocery outlet, but that's moving pretty good. So in what used to be the old Violet's Villa mobile home park, that leaves one more commercial lot that they created. Over here, the grocery outlet is right here. If you recall, we had to get rid of an easement and move a property line. So this parcel shrunk like this. We've been having some discussions with someone that wants to put a drive-through restaurant here, and it's a restaurant not in St. Helens or Scappoose. Until we get the application, I don't want to say who it is, but not in St. Helens or Scappoose yet. It's kind of a small lot, so they're working on the design for that. In fact, I got something very recently as that evolves. So let's talk about a front row seat to watching things develop. And since we talked about the old Violet's Villa mobile home park, I want to talk about that property. So here we are standing in the Matson Street looking down McBride. Now, I remember inspecting these homes many years ago in this little subdivision here and thinking, you know, what a pleasant little street. But I knew this was commercial property and it was going to change in time. But I do kind of feel bad for these property owners because I remember how it felt before. But there's the before and there's the after. Quite a big change. We have 204 apartments here. We're able to save some trees here and there on the side, but obviously there was a lot more before. So that's one pretty drastic change in the city. Same area, different street. Now we're at the intersection of where the new street Braden is at, on the south side of that site, looking up Matson Street. So here's the before picture, and then notice some of these trees here. You're going to see some of those remain as we look into the next one. Now this one is huge in its contrast, and this one's very recent. The reason I'm showing these is the apartments were completed in the last 6 months, and they were very time consuming for me, and especially Mike, our building official, and I'm pretty pleased that those are done. So a little bit more fun pictures. So this is what we call Braden Street now, and it's always been a right of way for a long, long time. And you can see here that, you know, there is this kind of informal footpath. So it's always been used as a passageway, but now it's no longer a footpath. It is a developed street and with more apartments. So this is another one of those very striking images, just showing, you know, what's going on in St. Helens. A lot of development, but that's good for our urban renewal and other projects too. When I first got here, there was a lot of discussion about this caboose. And so when this property was first talked about being redeveloped, and I was out kind of checking things out, I had to get a picture of this thing, just because of the discussions about where does it go. But it's still on a residential property, not a part of the commercial properties. As you can see here, it's behind the fence. So the famous caboose, but it's more visible to people at least. So other projects that you may not be, well, there's not a lot of signs of them starting in the field, but there's a lot of stuff going behind the scenes. This is the 238 unit apartment complex proposed off Gable Road. This is Highway 30, so it's close to Highway 30. This is the Wilcox and Flagel property, and so the building permits for this complex has been submitted. In fact, you can probably see it, the plans on my desk there. So that's moving along. It's another big project of significant scale. Dahlgren's building supply, that is not in the city right now, but they are proposing to expand their facility, which will probably require an annexation eventually. Very possible that they'll start working with us in the next 6 months, but we'll see. The St. Helens High School, they have a pretty major renovation they'll start applying for soon. This one was interesting. We had some recent meetings about this property here. This is on the north side of town, and so Pittsburgh Road is just right there, where we don't have a lot of highway side commercial property. But they are proposing a commercial subdivision here for 4 commercial lots. I think a couple of fast food restaurants and an oil lube place, or at least are tentatively proposed. Although that does represent some restaurants, fast food restaurants already in Scappoose, so they would be mirrored over here. So that's exciting to see. And what I mentioned how a lot of these properties have been sleeping and then just pop, 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 they start being developed. And of course, the police station stuff, we have the flood or the hydrologist hired to help us solve some of the flood riddles for that site. The county, I believe, has purchased the old school. And one of the things they talked about was putting in a ramp for disabled folks along here. And so our planning commission got to put up their historic landmarks commission hats on and kind of look at that. And that was one that Jenny really helped shepherd through. Dalton Lake, although we haven't been the lead on the city's purchase of it, that's been City Administrator John Walsh. The department has been assisting in just some of the planning stuff that has to happen for those things. Now here's a lovely property here. This is on the corner of Pittsburgh and US 30. And this is one that we took to court about 8 years ago or so. And it kind of cleaned up for a while, and then it got steadily worse and worse. We started receiving complaints, and it's been a pretty crazy last several years. And so when your head's kind of buried in paper, you don't see this stuff as much. But based on the complaints, looked at it and like, oh God, that's really getting bad. So we sent some notices out. We made contact with them, and we hope that they are going to clean it up. And they seem to be honest and forward about it, but we'll see. So we're working on that. We know that's an eyesore in the community that's right along the highway and close to that commercial subdivision that I mentioned. Business license code amendments, another thing that the department did not lead on. That was Assistant City Administrator Matt Brown, but we did have some review and input on that too. So goals, usually at the top of our list is reviewing stuff that comes in the door. We have a time limit per state law to do that. And as a growing city, there's a lot of things to review. There's all the city projects as well, the stuff in the waterfront, as Jenny had mentioned, there's the police station stuff, the Millerado Road property, other potential developments in the St. Helens Business Park. And so those are keeping us pretty busy. anything we have in the strategic plan, of course. That's the purpose of the strategic plan. And then, this fourth is just juggling. There's always a lot of stuff to juggle. Last time we talked about staff training. Christina Sullivan was new then, and so we had to get her up to speed on planning secretarial stuff, and that has gone really well. And then Jenny has continued to evolve as a planner, project manager. And so I will probably get rid of this for the next 6 months, but that's, it's gone well. What I'm talking about here, this is the connection of River Street to 2nd Street, and it's kind of related to the Sand Island parking. It's something that we've discussed off and on. It didn't make the strategic plan, the 20 to 22 strategic plan. It's something still on my mind. And that's why I put it here. And of course, as mentioned during the code amendments, we want to work on cottage clusters sometime in the future once we have an opportunity. Our food truck code amendments, we've mentioned that a little bit over the last years. We just want to clean that up and make it a little bit better. And the wild card is, what kind of state mandates are we going to get hit with? This code amendment batch that I've been working on, a lot of it was triggered by state mandates. And because we had to really carve the code up, we took an extra effort to really clean things up. But, this wild card, if it's another, powerlifting exercise, that takes a lot of time. Those code amendments were pretty brutal as far as time commitment. But, we'll see what happens, just like anything, and kind of go with the flow. And that's what we got for you. Any questions before
that was a lot. That was a lot, Jacob.
Jacob, I just want to say that presentation was great. It was really easy to follow, and I think you provided a lot of information. So thank you. Good job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Jacob,
I just have one question. I think I missed the very first one. Jacob's Bluff. What is going there?
Well, there's not a proposal now. And let me share screen. I'll if the mayor will let me talk about that briefly.
Yes, briefly, because we have a 6 o'clock later.
Sorry,
Okay,
I just thought that I had missed it. I was like, I see the Jacob's Bluff picture, but I don't know what's going there.
Yeah, there's not a proposal now. It's a bluff that was owned by someone else, and the reason it has that name was someone wanted to develop it, and they wanted to develop it by removing the bluff. And you kind of have an idea of how much rock is there, when you're looking over the roofs of those other buildings, and then also create a hole that was
7 foot below Jackass Canyon, 12th Street. Below that, 12th Street, the bottom of the hill, he wanted it 7 foot below.
So it was like 500,000 cubic yards of rock blasting. And we had to deny that based on it constituting mining in a residential zone. And it was a hard fight all the way up to the Court of Appeals.
Wow.
And this was around 2014. I had more hair before that, but we won. But it was super stressful. And that's how I earned the name. So we don't have a proposal now, but the strategic plan item is to clean up the property lines and stuff, so then we can market that or figure out what we want to do with it.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Jacob.
Jacob, I'm getting the feeling that your department is, at least by the type of things that are happening, is enlarging faster than when you first started. Just the type of jobs you have to handle, not just the volume, but the types. Is it getting to the point where you may need some extra people in your department?
Yeah, that's a good question. The classic ratio is 1 planner per 5,000 in population. And we're around 14,000 now. So I think it's very possible in the 5-year plan, we may be looking at needing another person. And part of it is Jenny one thing on the agenda is a revised job description for her. And as we continue to grow, which we anticipate, and as urban renewal picks up, she's going to need to roll with that stuff, and we will probably need some help. And so that's why I'm kind of assuming, you know, in the next 5 years, we may be having those discussions. On the other hand, you know, I've been doing this almost 20 years now, very, very close to 20 years. I'll be 20 years in June, and worked for 5 jurisdictions and have been through a lot of terrible budget cycles. And so I'm used to living lean, and so it makes me kind of careful having experienced that.
The reason I ask is some of these every 5,000, well, these were great, you know, 20 years ago. What we're doing in the community and other communities changed drastically. So some of these ratios are actually foolish when you take a look at what we're doing now. But if we were doing what we were doing 20 years ago, they're okay. And it just seems like the stuff that's on your plate is getting to be quite a different smorgasbord of stuff. And that's where the question came from. It looks like you need more specialists for some of these things.
Sure, yeah. And that's why I say, you know, 5-year plan.
Jacob runs lean. That's how he stays so fit. Okay, any other questions for Jacob?
Yes.
Patrick? Councilor Berkeley?
One comment and a question first for Jenny. The Gray Cliffs, the in-water facility. I'm not sure I remember if that's meant what exactly that is.
Yeah, in the Parks and Trails master plan, it calls for an in-water facility in that park. And so it was a desire to have some sort of dock,
okay,
or some type of ADA kayak canoe launch that is floating. Something in the water was called for.
Thank you. I recall that now, having heard that. So thanks.
I brought up it would be a perfect spot for an ADA fishing ramp as well.
Yeah.
So,
are there any fish there?
Patrick, that's been in the works for at least 10 years.
Yeah, right. And
talked about.
And thanks, Doug and our Councilor Morton. And I do recall that now. And Councilor Chilton, what's going on up at Jacobs Mountain now too? And any councilor is interested in seeing some beautiful flowers. Camas is probably blooming up there. And if you get up there at the right time of day, and I know this isn't I know it's an irritant to Mayor Scholl and the neighbors, but the lots of deer going through, and an irritant, I think, in terms of they leave their markings in the neighborhood, Mayor. But anyway, if you as a councilor you want to get familiar with some beautiful city property right now, just for your purposes of educating yourself, Camas should be in bloom. So there you go.
All right. And it's free fertilizer, Councilor Berkeley. So
okay, not
and a comment just to Jenny Dimshaw's good work on all the work that you have been doing thus far too. And you know, the State Marine Board, there's a lot of new boats, and I know that, you know, they're kind of probably stuck in this COVID and revamp, because I did have to make a phone call to them, but they did return my phone call. So continue to reach out to them. And I think it's a great idea. And they champion these type of projects, especially when it comes to handicap fishing docks and stuff like that, and kayak launch. So,
sure, yeah. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, thank you, Jacob. Gretchen, good work. And I'm going to move to our next item on the agenda. Thank you. Okay, next item is the legislative update. Rachel Berry.
Actually, it's the Millard Road property, if you want to back up.
Oh, it is.
Yep.
Okay. I'm trying to jump ahead, I guess.
Get going. Just to Councilor Berkeley's point on Great Cliffs Park, all the council may not know that the city maintains a commercial moorage lease agreement through DSL to preserve that right to have some facilities there at some point in the future, should we obtain the funding and the capacity to do that. Obviously we're in a period of a lot of high growth and just a lot of good things happening in every direction. So, but the Millard Road RFP is something that you've seen several times now. It's ready, it's queued up, it's ready to send to the DGAC, Daily Journal of Commerce, at your discretion. Jenny has already got that prepared to send. I can go through it fairly quickly. It's 24 pages long, or I can just give you the summary bits. And basically, it's an opportunity for a public-private partnership and for the city to solicit a development proposal from through this process that has a public outcome. It has a public benefit, and the city couldn't have just put it on the market to see what happened and came along. We've kind of advanced this information packet that has a market analysis, has the city's zoning and use and context, and the kinds of things the city might want to see out of the property, and that is public access to the north and something that has some open space connections and those transportation linkages. We went through the process of zoning it to mixed use. You're all very familiar with that. We talked about all the utilities. I mentioned the market analysis. So when we put this out, with your permission here, we're going to get applications back by June 11th. And there's a submission and evaluation process detailed in here. And it talks about the vision for the site, the financial feasibility, the capacity of the team, and just the development team's experience are all weighted up to a 100-point scale there. And if you want more detail, I'm happy to share it. But
John, right now, as you know, the covert mess is screwing up everything. One of the things is getting laborers to build things, and the other is to get money to build things. Is that going to be reflected in what you think our response is going to be, or is it just going to be as usual?
I would say time will tell.
Okay.
COVID seems to have no impact on the housing market, if not made it stronger. So.
Okay. Thank you.
So, John, the work that we have done thus far, is that going to benefit a builder in a sense, or is it going to maybe be less attractive to builders in your history as city manager?
The RFP has a lot of information that a developer would be looking for and probably tie it up in a feasibility period. In any way, we're kind of front loading this to make it more attractive and appealing. And the mixed use zoning aspect of it offers a lot of flexibility for the size of the lots, the configuration, the residential overlay zone types of activities and things. So we try to keep it really open, and so people get creative. And basically, we'll have a chance to look at it and accept one or go back out or.
Okay. That's all. That was my only question.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So now, if anybody has any further questions, and you'll be updating us on this when we get ready to closer to go, right?
So, and council action items tonight, you'll just give it a thumbs up to go out for the RFP. So.
Okay. And then when we get all those requests, we'll be able to review them, council. So, okay, legislative update, Rachel Berry.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and hello, councilors. Just wanted to give you a brief update. As you know, the American Rescue Plan has been passed and funding is starting to roll out. Have a couple of updates even since the documents were submitted for the packet. So I wanted to talk a little bit about funding requests that the city has submitted. First one was for improvements at Highway 30 in Gable. From our TSP, we had 800,000 requested for a westbound turning lane. So Congresswoman Modemichi was very interested in this project and got us in touch with Northwest Oregon Department of Transportation lead, who urged a lot of caution, Said, why are you doing a westbound lane when that entire intersection needs improvements? It's a very good point. And thanks to our planning department, went through the Riverfront Connector Plan. That has a full intersection upgrade at 2.2 million. So after talking more with ODOT, I learned a lot about how difficult it is to work with the railroads here locally, and how that crossing, the particular piece of railroad crossing, may be a challenge for the project. He also cautioned if we were to get an earmark and it was not at the full requested level, the city would be on the hook to make up the rest of that. So all of this being learned, we went ahead, we withdrew that request. The next steps are to get on the ODOT Crossing Safety Programs grant list and request list. Really recommended that the money for the railroad upgrades come in first, prior to seeking funding from anywhere else. I also learned that railroads do not pay for anything. They are not financial sponsors of projects. They are not helpful. So yeah, there was a lot of learning. More to come on that. We're going to start working with ODOT specifically on that rail upgrade, and then look at that intersection to accommodate all of the growth that's happening in our city and specifically around that intersection. So learned a lot there. Moving on, and you have all seen the one pagers and are aware of these. The next one up was that Highway 30 corridor segment through town. This would be to improve the safety, the streetscaping, and all of the multimodal access in that segment from Millard Road to Deer Island Road. Thanks again to Planning, Public Works, to John, to Matt, to the whole team. We put together a request for design and construction documents. That is now going to our federal delegation. It is on the list of Senators Wyden, Merkley, and Congresswoman Bonamici. That is a 1 year. If we are awarded that, it needs to be spent in 1 year. So to get the design and construction funded, that request was just over $800,000. So that has gone. And then our second project that went to Bonamici's office for transportation and infrastructure is the roundabout at Old Portland, Castor, and 18th, which is really critical to activating the business park. It's critical for safety. Also, folks trying to access the park, get some bike lanes and access for pedestrians and folks using wheeled mobility. So that has gone. Area revitalization items are, the riverfront is going along. And those funds are being sought through Business Oregon, through the Infrastructure Finance Authority. Those projects did not fit very neatly into a box for a congressional ask. So that is one that we're going to be working with locally, and also looking at the use of rescue plan funds coming to our city and to the county. Those are allowable for water, sewer, and broadband costs. So that could be an important piece there. We did, however, look at the industrial park redevelopment, which we just saw that great slide of, and submitted to the Oregon legislature through the Ways and Means process, funding for phase 1 for surface transportation and wastewater. The thought being some of our city rescue plan dollars could do some of the water infrastructure down there. So I want to give a big shout out to Council President Morton, who sat through many, many hours of Ways and Means testimony to deliver our ask to the larger committee. That again, 3.3 million for phase 1. And that we've got a longer window to do that work. It's through 2024 that we can spend rescue plan monies. So that is a good one to be at the Oregon legislature. And they're still trying to work out their process for earmarking and distributing those funds, and for beefing up Business Oregon loan and grant programs. So it is a really exciting time. And these projects also have generational impact. And then, of course, still on the list and the radar is Central Waterfront Project. We're working, and you'll see tonight, a resolution authorizing application through the Oregon Office of Emergency Management to continue the study work there at Central. Are there any questions about those? It's a lot
I've
of
got
information.
one, Rachel.
Mhm.
As you know, we're trying to build a police station. And
Correct.
one of the problems we have is floodplain. And we also, you're just talking about a large circle right next to it. Could that large circle process somehow alleviate by magic engineering the floodplain problem?
I am not a magic engineer, so I do not know. But it's certainly, that's a great consideration, and let's really keep that front and
Because
center.
that little bridge right now is part of the problem, and that you would think you'd be able to sneak something to get rid of that bridge with the circle, which then gets rid of the floodplain problem.
That's a great point. We will keep that on the radar as these are funded, we hope.
Rachel, I have a question as well.
Sure.
And this has been discussed again years ago when the Riverfront project came along, and it was talked about, but now it seems to make a lot more sense. There's an opportunity for federal grants in the river waterways for ferry boats. And I'm thinking mostly of commercial boats like the Portland Spirit and the Sternwheeler that goes by our community on a weekly basis. Not so much now with the COVID, but in the future. There was talk briefly about the Portland Spirit wanting to obtain dockage in our community. Is there any kind of, has any research been done for grants that deal with dockage in our area for commercial vessels to bring tourists to our community, as well as other commodities? I would imagine now would be a really ripe time to look at federal grants as well as state grants in the transportation sector to facilitate commercial endeavors on the Columbia side near our waterfront, our riverfront development. It was briefly talked about and looked at 8 years ago. But it would be nice to revisit that, because with all the building and all the things going on in our exciting city, not so exciting now, but in the future, it is going to be darned exciting with service-based economy based on tourism. My heavens, I can't imagine what the transition is going to be like. It would be good to incorporate commercial boat traffic in our deep water port.
That would be fabulous. Absolutely. So in reviewing the congressional earmark kind of buckets of money and places where they can make appropriation, I did not see anything specific for that. There was some port funding, but it was mostly for existing port facilities. This conversation is great, and it's always exciting. And I know folks have talked about ferries for all kinds of reasons, for commercial, for river crossing, for community resiliency and emergency response planning. Yeah, I have a big note, and we'll certainly be looking around more and working internally to see about state sources too. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm looking forward to a vibrant riverfront.
Thank you, Rachel, for all your hard work.
I'm going to connect two things together, the ODOT transportation and Doug's commercial dock to a ferry boat, even if it's just passenger ferries across the river. So trying to hit up two different areas.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, I'd like to learn more about it and see how it can really serve our city and serve economic vitality and also safety of our community.
The one thing I learned about ferries is it takes a federal grants quite a bit just to keep them afloat, so to speak.
It takes a federal grant to get to the federal paperwork in the Coast Guard.
And yeah, there's a lot of different Army Corps of Engineers to just a bunch of people that you have to apply. I did research that quite a bit, but anything you can find out further on that would be great.
Yeah.
That and the railroads are the same gods that stop progress.
Okay.
And maybe it's a good opportunity to partner and to think about us as a Lower Columbia region too. Maybe we look across the river or to some other, maritime federations that exist locally too. So regionally.
Yeah, I think you're right on that, Rachel. Like within Kalama, last year when I had to construct a large dock for passenger ships, and I'm not sure what's going on over in Woodland, but seems to me their port, Woodland, has lots of big plans for development too. So some kind of coordination or would be at least are finding out exactly what's going on and how we could fit in with that would be good.
Councilor Berkeley, I would recommend one thing is tour the port facility of Ridgefield. It's a multi-million dollar endeavor, and it's amazing. If you can get a hold of the port director and arrange a tour, they are very welcoming on and very proud of their facility there. It's amazing, and it's across the river, so you can access it by Lake River by boat or just over by car.
Yes, I'd have to find a new paddling companion. I do not think I will be able to persuade my wife to paddle across with me in the canoe to Ridgefield, crossing the Columbia when the wind is blowing and nobody in their right mind would be out there in a canoe. So I'll have to find if there's someone else who'd be willing to accompany me on that paddle. But I'll take you up on looking at that. Thanks.
I'll make myself available for a boat ride over, or volunteer the mayor, one or the other.
Okay.
Well, sounds like a field trip is in the offing, so that's a great thing.
Hey! All right.
Right on.
I definitely would extend that, but remember, my boat runs on gas, not thanks.
Woo.
Okay.
Well, wonderful. Thank you.
Rachel,
And you'll see. Oh,
go ahead.
okay.
Go ahead. Wrap it up.
I've also included just an overview of legislative priorities in the packet, just for your awareness. There are a couple things just still in negotiation out there. And I will send you all a revised funding request update. And today we've got the fresh League of Oregon Cities bill list. Now that we've passed the first deadline, a lot of those really threatening things have been amended so that they're easy to deal with. Some of the biggest threats have been dispatched, so things are going. But thank you all for your work.
How difficult has COVID been for our legislation? As far as it seems like they're continuing to have to take breaks because of issues with COVID.
Yes. The news today is that the Oregon House is not meeting on the floor, and this is going to slow down bills quite a bit due to a COVID case. So We will see. And it's clunky. The process is clunky, as Council President Morton really lived. Like, it's difficult. Yes, folks from around the state can sign in virtually, which is great, and would love to preserve that. But it's technical glitches, or the windstorm has knocked out entire districts. So it's certainly a, and it's difficult to advocate, right? It's very difficult to be, you would see someone in the hallway, and now it's calling and emailing and following up for a 30-second question and answer. So it's certainly a challenge.
Okay, Rachel, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next on our item on agenda is review amendments to associate planner job description. John. You'll have to unmute yourself too, John.
Thank you, Mayor. So including in your packet, there's an amended job description for the associate planner, kind of adding additional duties. And those additional duties are a lot of duties that Jenny is doing already. The community development, we're creating this community development project manager is the title of the position. And that expansion of duties includes working with urban renewal agency, things that she's already doing, but that's starting to ramp up as far as funding increment and projects and things of that nature. Supporting the Main Street program staff, through the staff liaison for that, and continue to work with the grants and the grants management, and really this project management role on the waterfront is a big piece of that too, as far as the river walk and the park improvements and things of that nature. So it's been vetted by the unions. It's been to the local government personnel folks for review, and it's checked out. It's just ready for your consideration.
Okay.
If there's any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
I'm not hearing any or seeing any, so.
Councilor Topaz looks like he's talking, but he is muted.
John, the first group of sentences in the job description basically says she has to report to, and it's almost like overseen in all projects by her boss, as compared to being an associate and being guided by her boss.
She would oversee assigned projects, correct?
Yeah, I mean, she's doing a lot more than we ever thought of when we got started, and it's going to get worse. You would think she would have a little more freedom in the authority, and that puts her basically as subservient at every level. Just the wording, not what she's doing.
It is a represented position, so that is a factor.
I was just hoping for a little broader authority wording at that point. So something she doesn't have to check with Jacob to finalize.
Well, there's a dual role with the agency, urban rural agency, acting to serve that. It's several boards that she's going to be working with.
Okay, and she does not have to get approval when she's working the boards from Jacob on that. Is that correct?
Jacob was still her direct supervisor, yes.
Yeah.
I
would like to make her more of an associate of Jacob, so it's, we'll say, a pseudo complementary position.
Well, I will say that this is she approves of this job description the way it is. So
yeah, it is, because I see the job becoming bigger and bigger, and I'd like to, keep the door open to bigger and bigger without having to go through a bunch of extra little steps.
Well, I think.
So Councilor Topaz, I'm confused of what you are promoting.
I would like her to be more of an associate of Jacob. What?
Have you got a suggestion for the council?
I would like to make her an associate, and I'm trying to find the correct legal words where she has, we'll say, 80% freedom, and some things has to be okayed by Jacob. I don't want everything that she does have to be approved by Jacob. She's doing the work, but I want to get rid of one step where she has the authority to do this without having to go through Jacob on paper.
Where
That's the
does
way
it
the
say
work-
anywhere? Where does it say anywhere that she has to go through Jacob? That would be an option for her.
Yeah, the way the words are, it's very definite that he's the boss on everything. I'd like to loosen that up, is what I'm saying.
Well, because he is the
Yeah, I
city
know.
planner.
It's
But
set up
can
as a
you have
hybrid.
authority without needing him on some of these projects?
Well, I have confidence in Jacob, and I have confidence in him allowing his what you call subservience to do their work and do their work in their own way. I've just seen it in the reports. My heavens, and he's given.
They
I mean,
do fantastic work. What happens if Jacob dies or gets another job? Do you have confidence on paper for the next person, or the same way with Jenny?
yes, I have confidence that our city manager will oversee that and work through it.
Yep. And it's been cleared by the union. It's been looked at from our staff. I can't see no reason to worry about a little wordsmithing.
Yeah, just to be clear.
That's really what I'm talking about, is wordsmithing.
So
There's no doubt about that.
And I will say this, is that each and every one of us works for somebody. We work for the citizens, even though we're at the top. And John works at the direction of the council. And Jacob works at the direction of John. And Jenny works at the direction of Jacob. So they all work for citizens. And if they don't, then the city council steps in, or the administrator, to keep them on cue.
As I said, I just wanted to give her, that position a little more freedom as it grows, because it is growing. And at one point, I would almost expect that to be split to a separate department, as it's blossoming. That's the whole point. I'm looking for the future to give more power, administrative power, to that position. So the opportunity to do that.
I would agree with that point, that this is an interim step into, as the urban renewal agency grows, because one thing that I haven't been able to communicate very well here is that the community development director, which is also myself, is also in charge of her duties as far as the urban renewal administrator. So, and as she grows into that, there'll be more work in that arena, but in our infancy here, it's not happening quite yet.
And Steve, this is Jacob. I think it is a position that can evolve into the future, but we're at a certain point now. And I think some of your concerns would be about management style, micromanaging versus otherwise. And, that's why you make sure you don't hire crappy managers.
Yeah, but see, that's what I'm saying. You leave for some reason. How do I, ensure the person who replaces you is not a crappy manager? But you and Jenny have formed a hand in glove operation that's great. Not everybody has that ability, and I'm trying to make sure that I don't lose that ability from her if we have a bad manager.
So, go ahead, Jacob. Sorry.
And I would just, I think, that's why you have an interview process for new positions. Let's say I win the lottery and that's it for me. You have, just like with your public works director, you were very diligent about selecting someone that you felt right. And that's why you go through that process. The one thing that there's always the human element that's
right.
hard to fetter out in an interview process, and that's just about what kind of chemistry people have. But the interview process at least helps kind of give you an idea about what kind of person you're dealing with. I don't know if that makes you feel better, but
now, see, the problem I see is that I've got you who is very good and Jenny who is very good, and you work together, as I say, hand in glove. When you start putting down, we say, more rigid job descriptions, when I lose the ability I have now, and I think we're so underrating you that this normal process, even interview process, would hurt us. Well, obviously, we can always change the game later, but
Council Berkeley, you've been waiting patiently.
Yeah. So no, I think you just said that, Councilor Topaz. I think this description reflects the current situation.
Yes.
And that we need to do that, but then if the situation changes, we certainly have the ability to look at that. I would think that we would, yeah, so that, it is speculative. It probably will change, but I personally, I believe that this is sufficient for the current situation and staffing we have. And let's focus on that and then go to the next steps if we need to when that occurs.
I agree. I totally agree, Councilor Berkeley. Okay, so any other questions for John on the job description? Okay, I'm not hearing any. Okay, now we have discussion of 4th of July event. And the reason this came up is because of our tourism meeting the other night. And I just want to make clear that we as a council are making a decision to not do fireworks next year. That was going to be the entire, before I set up this meeting with the volunteers, was going to be to allow whoever wanted to try to take it over to know what it takes to make it run. Because the old committee used to be a nonprofit and they used to do street dances to all kinds of going to businesses and asking for donations, to putting jugs out on the counter, to a number of things to raise money and to make it work by volunteering hours over on the island to make it work. And it seemed like all of a sudden it was like, well, it was being put towards Mayor Scholes deciding this, and that's not the case. That is not the case. But it felt like that. And I just want to make clear that this is a council decision this is our final year of fireworks. And that's what, and if not, we need to decide now. I mean, the fireworks still are happening. We know that. We funded that for this year, but we need to make that decision.
My question is, have we reached out to community organizations to have a warm handoff? I don't want to just dump it and then it's gone. I don't think that's the right way to handle it.
So that would be kind of the announcement would be not I guess a warm send off, because if somebody were to say, I want to take it tomorrow, they could start raising money the next day, not for this year's shoot. So they're already ahead of schedule. That's why it's vitally important to not set them up for failure and get them started right now, because the funding needs to be there for next year at this time. That's why we cannot drag our feet much longer on this, and we need to make a decision, is because by April, Western's going to want to know the exact dollar amount of next year's shoot next April. So they need to start raising money now, immediately.
So I heard clearly at the meeting that we were handing this off. This is the last year that the city conducts the fireworks. Of course, I don't think that any way it implies that we're not wanting to be involved in some way in supporting the process, but that absolutely we don't want to leave it hanging that if this doesn't, if the community or volunteers don't come about, that we are suddenly going to a year from now say, okay, we're going to make up, we're going to pay for it. I think that in my mind, we clearly said that the degree of involvement that the city has had these last few years is coming to an end. And we are not just going to, our belief is we're not just going to dump it off. And I know, as you said, Mayor Scholl, talking with volunteers, and we need to promote it, promote community involvement. But yes, in my mind, if a year from now in April, we do not have the community raising the funds, the city is not going to step in and rescue the event. That we truly want the community to take ownership of this, and giving them, passing the baton, and by passing the baton, making a smooth transfer. We're not just dropping out, but in terms of our financial commitment, and we are done at the level that we have been doing these last few years.
Can we
Patrick,
put
I
out an
think that's
RFP for this?
Who's
Can we put out
up?
an RFP, Pat?
Sorry?
Can we put out an RFP for organizations to take this up?
Well, I don't think we want to put, because if we put an RFP, then the city is in a position of controlling
No,
it.
that doesn't make
And I think
sense.
we're not, so that we wouldn't want to put, we are handing this over.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense to put out an RFP. That means that we would be in charge of all of that, getting the RFPs back and going through them, whatever. No, that makes no sense at all. What does make sense is that we put out some communications that everyone understands in our community that we are not a part of it. And Councilor Berkeley said it in a really good way, as with what we are doing now. We could help in some way. We could be a partner in some way with 3 or 4 other organizations, but as it is now, we have the entire burden of doing this. And I certainly don't want to put out an RFP to kind of help continue to facilitate our involvement with it. We should put out a communication, and keep in mind that it isn't a door closed totally, that we can always advocate and help out in any way we can. And that's what our council is here for, to be flexible and make those decisions as other groups start to move forward.
Okay,
Well,
so
I'm gonna collect my RFP. I need a mechanism to ask people to volunteer to do this, not that the city does it. And I just thought, if we put out an RFP, you're requesting a proposal. We're requesting a proposal for a group to take over. That was why I called it an RFP.
Okay.
That's not the city, but how do we publicly ask community people to take over?
That's what I'm actually going to. That's actually kind of what I'm going to facilitate. But in the direction that it was going, I didn't want to take. I want to put it as an action item tonight if we are doing this, and indeed not having fireworks, because I don't want it next year or the year after saying, well, the mayor and council at that time, or just even the mayor, said he was going to have it all taken care of. No, I'm bringing the old volunteers to tell a story. They are going to, Heather called me yesterday of Western Fireworks, Heather Gobey, and she needs to know the commitment of some of the volunteers. So I need to have that meeting sooner than later. But in our tourism, it was feeling like all of a sudden, like it was me taking this away, and it's not. No. It's not. Okay. That's what it felt like. And so tonight is going to be an action item. If we need to further this discussion later tonight, we can. But I'm going to put it on an action item tonight so we can have further discussion later. I do want to we have missed our break. We have the strategic plans update and the administrator report. I think we should almost maybe kick them to this evening.
I agree.
Because we have an executive session under ORS 192-662 E, H, and I do believe it was B. It is B. So why don't we go ahead and adjourn this, take a 10-minute break, and then we'll go into executive session, okay?
Mayor, before you do that, I just wanted to remind the council to look at their inboxes. There's a memo from Corporal King regarding the dock ordinances, and there's also a memo from our legal counsel regarding the hearing last night and options related to that.
Okay.
And
Is
did
that
you
on
want,
emails?
yeah. Did you want to have Sue stay for the reservoir? I
Yeah.
got, and I need to call in that attorney to come in, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we will be in executive session in 10 minutes from now, which is, it's 3:27, 3:37. We'll see you in 10 minutes.
Do we save our same passcodes?
Yes, it's
Are we-
this right here.
You can
Okay, got it.
stay on the.
Stay on the line.
This
Stay on
one,
the line.
all right.
Yep.
You can turn your camera off if you want.
Kathy or John, are you there?